welcome to Inside Scoop Virginia. I'm your host, Jeffrey Sachs, and with me today is Mike Lane. I'm sitting in for Mark Levine. We're happy to have you here. 56% of you say the most pressing issue for this coming election is the economic plan, or what's happening with the economy. So today, Mike and I are going to talk exclusively about the presidential candidates' economic plans. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter what the economic plans are. This president, President Bush, has left us with a $1 trillion deficit this year. $1 trillion. It doesn't matter what Barack Obama says or John McCain says. They're not going to be able to do anything besides raise taxes to pay off this debt, unless we want to hand it to our children.
Well, of course, you know that we prefer on the Republican side increased economic growth and economic activity to bring in more tax revenues to pay it off. Raising taxes in a tough economy is the worst thing I'd like to see, Jeff, but let's talk about it.
You say bringing jobs growth. I want to take that. We have a lot of illegal immigrants here who have come here for jobs. Your worship on this thing, let's have jobs, jobs, jobs. And the jobs you bring are flipping burgers at Giant or at McDonald's and stocking shelves at Giant. Illegal immigrants or Walmart or Target. These aren't the jobs we want. We need quality economic jobs, jobs where people have education and can really get into the minimum wage. And your worship of jobs is short-sighted. It doesn't look at the bigger picture.
Well, first of all, you want all jobs, because there are some people who don't have the skills for the highly paying job, and you want to find some way to keep everyone employed because it's necessary. Now, I agree that on a desirability scale, flipping burgers down at the local Golden Arches is not the kind of jobs that is going to produce the strong rebounding economy that we're looking for. What we're looking for really is good, strong manufacturing jobs to the extent that the manufacturing sector still competes in the worldwide economy, and we know that it's been buffeted over the last 30, 40 years by international management. We look for jobs in international trade and export, import, things like that that are good paying, and then good, strong, high-paying service jobs, particularly in high-tech computers, things like that, that will provide the American economy with the strong, good-paying jobs that will boost it and drag it out of what it's in now. And I suspect that we're probably going to differ as to how we get to those good-paying jobs, even if we might agree on the necessity for them.
You mentioned good-paying jobs and the exporters. The largest single exporter we have in this country is Boeing. And right now, Boeing labor is on strike. When your parents, or maybe you graduated and went into the Marine Corps way back when, the profits of a company, a third went to labor, a third went to the capital, i.e. the stockholders, and a third went to the employees, or the management. Sorry, it was a third, a third, a third. Over time, just 5 years ago, Boeing said, we're about to go bankrupt. Got all these concessions, about $2 billion a year from the people on the manufacturing line. This past year, they had a $3 billion profit. And the employees went on strike just back in September because they were saying, look, we gave up $2 billion. Now you're making $3 billion. Share it with us employees. And union and management said no. These are the sort of high-paying jobs that you are preaching, but at the same time, we're not promoting.
They are good jobs. And in fact, somebody who works an industrial production line for a company such as Boeing, those are wonderful jobs. And those are the kinds of jobs that we'd like to have here in America. And hopefully we'll be able to keep them here in America. And hopefully Boeing will be able to expand its production through exports and increase domestic sales. And they'll be able to hire more people. But ultimately, the split of the pot as to how much goes to the line workers and how much goes to overhead and how much goes to management employees and how much goes to stockholders and things like that is subject, the workers' share is subject to negotiation between management and the labor union that represents the employees at Boeing, and that's what they're doing now. They're negotiating, and apparently they're not getting as close to a settlement as they should. But that doesn't mean a strike is one of the tools in the toolbox of the labor unions, and that's a tool they've chosen to employ now. I suspect that with the economy being as soft as it is and as unsettled, that we're going to see both sides starting to seek a middle ground and getting those workers back to work faster than they otherwise would.
You talked about middle ground. They said last month the economy, manufacturing dropped to about 2.8%, 2.5% they said it blamed on Boeing's strike. And I think it was Sunday's paper, yesterday's. At this point, why doesn't President Bush, your Republican president, call a federal mediator and say, get these guys to the table and sit down and discuss this?
Well, if it gets to the point where it becomes a significant influence on the economy as a whole, if it gets to the point where that single issue of getting the employees back to work at Boeing would create the difference between a rebounding economy and keeping us where we are now, I'm sure the president would call both sides in the point of federal mediator. I don't know if they come under the Railroad Workers Act where he could impose a settlement. I don't think they do.
No,
but he could do that. But right now, Jeff, I think that the president thinks it's time to let the employees and let management and let the shareholders work this out among themselves. And there's reason to believe that they can get there by themselves. When we get to the point where there's reason to believe they can't get there, then a federal mediator is appropriate. But I don't think the president thinks we're there yet, and I don't think we're there yet.
How much of a loss of our GDP will you accept before we say we're going to force you to federal mediation? At what level do we say we have to do something?
I don't think there's a magic number. I don't think you can say that 2, 4, 6, whatever it is any particular magic number. I think what you have to look at are the two sides making progress. Are they bargaining in good faith? Do they look like they're going to be able to come to an agreement, eventually an agreement that's going to be bought into by the employees, the shareholders, and the management of the company? And as long as it looks like they can make progress, they don't have to be making progress on an hour by hour or a day by day basis. But as long as it looks like they can come to a settlement, it seems to me that you want to let them bargain it out and come to the agreement themselves rather than imposing federal government intervention in the process.
I think this goes to the fundamental difference between you as a Republican and me as a Democrat. You're going to say, we're going to let the market forces decide for themselves, and after a certain point, the union's going to fold or the company's going to buckle under, and we're just going to let it be.
Not necessarily.
I think strikes, everyone loses. I don't think there are winners in strikes. Maybe the local food pantry gets rid of all that old tomato sauce they've been storing up for years. But nobody wins. And as a Democrat, I would say, from day one, say, all right, you've gone to a strike, you've not been able to get it to among yourselves, send in the federal mediator. And I think that's a fundamental difference between the laissez-faire Republicans and the activist Democrats of getting government involved early before Katrina has been left to rot for a week before we send in people, or early on.
I suspect, Jeff, you're right. This is a fundamental difference in our viewpoint on this whole thing. I would much prefer to allow labor and management to work out the differences on terms and conditions that they mutually agree through the bargaining process are in each other's interests. Rather than have the government intervene at an early time. There does come a time when the government might properly intervene, right, but we're just not there yet, I don't think.
A good mediator, and I'm not saying necessarily the one they'd send out would be a good mediator, is not going to force, all right, union, you take these cuts, management, you take these cuts. They're going to come in there and basically be the oil that helps grease the skids to get things moving. They're not going to force management to do something that management inherently can't, and they're not going to be able to force labor to do something that labor inherently can't. They're just going to help get them down that road rather than taking these little incremental steps. Get some big leaps to get to an end solution that's acceptable.
If a mediator is indeed the solution to this problem, both sides can call for a mediator. You don't need the president to call for the mediator. You don't need him to call them into the Oval Office and knock their heads and say, okay, I'm going to give you this mediator and don't come out till this is settled. Both sides can call for a mediator. And typically, one side or the other, when they perceive that they're not making enough progress, does call for a mediator. It puts a little bit of pressure on the other side, and sometimes they make it happen. I think that, mediators are good. They don't impose solutions, as you pointed out.
Right.
Mediators point out to each side the strengths of their argument and the weaknesses of their argument, and they do it to both sides, and they sort of bring them together. Mediation may work. It's not time for the federal government to do it.
If you want to participate in this, 571-749-1166. If you want to participate, please call in. The phone lines are open. I'm going to go to the computer graphic right now, and we're going to talk about this. You hear on the radio all the time about the tax plan. We've just gone to digital. So if we can bring up the graphic, if not, I'll just walk you through it. They say McCain's going to cut your taxes. And sure enough, according to the Washington Post and the Tax Policy Center, they have cuts across the board. And I'm not sure you can see this right now. We are at a static feed on the thing. But at the end of the day, McCain, if you make above $2.87 million, according to this graph here, and it was in the Washington Post and it was from the Tax Policy Center, and my friend Mike Lane will say, yes, that is a left-leaning group. It's an Urban Policy Institute, maybe left, maybe right.
Urban Policy Institute and Brookings Institution collaboration. So it tilts slightly left, you know.
The top 1%, 0.1%, those making $2.87 million, under Barack Obama, they will pay 11.5%, which I don't think is exactly opposite, or $700,000 more in taxes. That's a huge tax increase. I recognize that. But out of $2.87 million, that's not exactly true, because when you have
we got a problem with
and you have the guy from Omaha, they're paying $100 million in annual taxes. So when you have $700,000 that goes up, that's what happens. Looking at John McCain's plan, those riches, 1/10 of 1%, we're talking the Paris Hiltons or McCain's wife, they get a $269,000 $269,000 pay tax cut under McCain. And as you go down, most here in Fairfax County, those between $66,000 and $111,000, under McCain, they get a $1,000 tax cut. Under Barack Obama, you'll get a $1,200 tax cut, $200. It isn't very much of the week. If you make $111,000 to $160,000, under John McCain, you'll make $2,600 in reduced taxes. Under Barack Obama's plan, it's $2,200, $400. At the end of the day, for the vast majority of our viewers who live here in Fairfax County or the surrounding counties who fall into these two categories, which is above minimal class, because they're saying 60% of the people make below $66,000. We're not talking a whole lot of difference between these two and their plans.
The difference in the plans is, you know, for the middle class, there's not that big a difference. Here's the three differences as I see it, or as I understand it. The first is overall a net taxation on the economy. Barack Obama, even though he says he exempts 95% of people or whatever it is, the net taxation on the economy is higher because the taxation on the higher income people is enough that he's taking money out of the economy at a time when the economy needs it. Now, it happens to be that right now. I would argue that we probably never need to do that, but we'll continue this after the break.
Yes, if you want to join in this discussion, 571-749-1166. We're going to be talking about the economy and their tax plans. We'll be right back after these messages. Thank you for joining.
I helped turn my child's public school into a whole new kind of school. One with a curriculum that really motivates kids. One that has extended hours, 6 days a week. Academic, cultural, and recreational activities. One that has support services like medical and dental right there. A school where parents' involvement is encouraged. Where teachers have more time to teach. And students are excited about learning. There's just one problem. My child doesn't ever want to come home. You can help turn your school into a community school for excellence. Find out how. Call 1-877-LOVE-TO-LEARN.
It's coming. Right to your neighborhood. And when it does, you may be surprised. It's your Social Security statement of your benefits, and it's going to help you plan your financial future. Your benefit statement will tell you how much Social Security you're eligible to receive and when you'll get it. Then you'll know how much you need to save for retirement, because that's coming too. The future is in your hands. Choose to save.
The toxic fumes from this meth lab are seeping into Jamie's sinus cavity. Ammonia vapors invade her throat. Toxic gases fill her lungs. Jamie's body is deteriorating. And she doesn't even know it.
Jamie, dinner.
So, who has the drug problem now? Find out how meth affects you at drugfree.org/meth.
Mark Levine, who's off this week. The issue of the day is the tax policies of Barack Obama and John McCain. And you are arguing right before break, and if you want to call in, 571-749-1166, we'd be happy to have your call, that you are giving, when you give a tax break, you're giving people money back to the economy. Because that's what John McCain is saying. We're going to cut your taxes. At the end of the day, you're running up the deficit. And the deficit is paid for. So when I want to invest, I can do one of three things. I can invest in a company, I can sit on the money in my bank account or under my mattress, or I could have Uncle Sam invest it through taxes. And then the debt going up is not good for the long-term economic health of the economy. We are $10.6 trillion in the debt. That's how much each and every one of us owes, which breaks out to somewhere around $4,500 per person. That doesn't make sense. It's more than that. A lot per man, woman, and child.
Even if it's a penny, it's too much.
We shouldn't be in debt. There are three things you go into debt for. Two things that Barack Obama went into debt for: his house and his education. Other than that, you shouldn't be going into debt. I will add your first car out of college, and that's it. And I think it is bad tax policy, is bad economic policy, that we are running and sucking up capital that should be better invested in our small industry and enterprise capital investment rather than being sucked into Uncle Sam's coffers and being wasted on tax giveaways to everybody. And I don't like the stimulus checks.
Well, we can, interesting you should bring that up. We'll get to that as well. Let me finish what I was saying before the break. I'll do it quick.
Year-round, with loads of academic.
I'll do the abridged version of it, Jeff, because there's a lot of things here to cover, actually, in tax policy. But the first thing is, okay, my understanding of the Obama tax plan is that it's a net taxation on the economy. You can argue about who the winners are, who the losers are, but it's a net taxation on the economy, whereas McCain, as you point out, gives money back into the economy by overall reducing taxes. In times of a troubled economy, I think the McCain plan wins on that. The second thing that I don't like about the Obama plan is he's taking too many people off the tax rolls. And he's giving, he claims that, 98% of people get a tax reduction. Well, that's actually not right, because 40% of people don't pay taxes as it is. So what they're getting is they're not getting a tax reduction. They're getting an increased welfare rebate check from the government, which I don't think is really the right way to go. And, he has a plan for taking all seniors under $50,000 off the tax rolls. I think everybody should pay, even if they're paying $1, everybody should have an investment in the government and pay some sort of tax. They shouldn't be given a clean ride. The last thing I'll say about that is the very wealthy. Okay, you say, well, the wealthy can afford to pay more. Well, who better uses that dollar? When the government takes it, it's got no particular economic productivity for anything. But when somebody has $1, there's four things they can do with it. They can save it, increasing the savings pool. We're desperate to have increased savings pools.
We are in a negative savings rate,
right.
Yes.
You can save it, and that's good. Or you can invest it. And investing it would be very good because that helps with industrial production and economic expansion. The third thing you can do is you can spend it on consumer goods, which is a stimulus for the economy. Now, you said you don't like the stimulus checks, but it's a stimulus for the economy.
Right.
And then the fourth thing you can do is you can give it to charity. Now, which of those four things is a bad thing to do with your money?
That's on Inside Scoop. You gave me so much to run with. Obviously, when you give $1,000 or whatever this tax break is to a guy named Donald Trump, he puts it in his pocket. When you give it to a guy who's barely making ends meet, he's going to be able to pay off some credit card bills, hopefully, buy some food for his family, and maybe pay for some electrical bills because it's cold outside tonight and their electrical bills are going up. You're right. In down economic times, economic theory says you go put money in the economy. I agree with you. I just don't agree with how McCain and Bush are doing it. If I want to stimulate the economy, give me $70 billion for 10 years, $70 billion a year. Let me invest in roads. Let me invest in mass transit. Let me build that rail to Dulles. That's how you stimulate the economies. I don't want bridges falling into the Mississippi. That's how you stimulate the economy. Giving it a blank check to Paulson to go invest it in Wall Street whatever. I don't even know how they're going to invest it, or because what they told us 2 weeks ago is not what they're doing. You're putting the money where? I can't point to this month, $700 billion that Congress approved to go to Wall Street. They're putting it in banks and buying preferred shares. Now, I prefer the preferred shares over the bonds, don't get me wrong. But Bush, when we went to Iraq, they said, trust us, we'll take care of this. Paulson went on to Capitol Hill and said, trust us, we'll take care of this mess. What are they really doing? At the end of the day, we don't know what happened in Fannie Mae. I can't tell you. The books are not there. They're months behind, if not years, because of accounting irregularities. You don't know where this money's going. And at the end of the day, $820 billion was just given away. For what? What did we get for that?
Well, we don't know yet. We think we know what we want to get at the end of the road, but we don't know yet. And the situation is that we are in unprecedented economic waters, troubled waters, and we're using unprecedented tools to try and navigate those troubled waters. Right. And I don't think anybody, including the Republican and the Democratic leaders in Congress who voted for the rescue package, really know what they would do with the $700 billion or the $850 billion if they were making the decisions. I don't think the Secretary of the Treasury knows what he's going to do with each and every one of the $850 billion. I think he knows that right now he wants to stabilize banks. So as you point out, there's a program to buy the preferred shares, and they're doing that. They're investing in banks. But what are the banks doing? Well, in the first week, the banks are doing the wrong thing. Rather than turning around and lending it, they're sitting on it, keeping their reserves built up so that they won't get into economic trouble. Well, the only thing that's going to get us out of this is economic activity, and so we need
building
the banks,
bridges gets economic activity.
We need to get the markets back in order, and the reason we went for this rescue package, bipartisan, substantial disagreement on the House Republican side, but bipartisan, was to salvage and reinvigorate the markets, not to reinvigorate any particular industry, any particular company, any particular sector. It was to reinvigorate the markets, because if you don't have markets, our entire economic model fails.
I agree with you if you don't have economics. I will disagree you. Most of the Democrats felt they had no choice, that they had to vote for this economic stimulus plan because they were in control. And there were some Democrats who I'm sure understood it. But most of them said, these guys spent money and got us into trouble. I was door knocking on behalf of Barack Obama 3 weeks ago now. And I was talking to a new neighbor, and she says, I just moved in. I said, oh, really? Where'd you move? She said, right here in this condo. The one that was in foreclosure. She said, yes. 6 months ago, I was visiting a friend in the neighborhood. We offered $279.
I just don't see where any of them are bad.
Go ahead. For the condo. The bank refused to do a short sale. So we said, well, we have another 6 months on our current rental. We'll stay on the rental. We'll be fine. They saw it went into foreclosure. They offered $239, $40,000 less. The bank said yes, no problem, because it had been foreclosed upon. So because the bank got greedy, they lost $40,000. Now, 5 years ago, it used to cost $25,000 to foreclose a property. With so many out there, I'm sure they have internal legal help, so the price may have come down.
Volume discount.
Exactly, economies of scale. But the banks were greedy. Instead of taking a short sale, that condo sold for $303. I assume the person put some equity down. I don't know. Instead of taking $10,000, $12,000 loss, they took $10,000, $12,000 unknown, plus $65,000 because they got greedy. And now Uncle Sam and you and I and everyone watching is paying through the nose $700 billion. Now, part of that $830 billion, $65 billion of it went to the alternative minimum tax, to alleviate that. Now, Obama said, alternative minimum tax should be increasing with inflation. You know, it should go up every year. When they first passed that back in 1980, $62,000 was a lot more than $62,000 now.
It sure was.
You want to address this?
Well, you know, again, we are in uncharted economic turmoil waters. We just don't know where we are yet. We don't even know the scope or the magnitude of the problem. We know we have to do something. We don't know exactly what we're going to do. You know, John McCain has said as part of his economic program that if it's home mortgages that got us into this mess, then it's home mortgage stabilization that has to lead us out of this mess. And so he has proposed that the first $300 billion of the $700 billion rescue package be spent in stabilizing home mortgages and, you know, allowing the government to buy up this bad paper, renegotiate the loans with the homeowners at a rate that will allow each and every homeowner to stay in their homes and pay something that they can afford to pay.
You're doing a top down. We're going to help the banks stabilize the little guy.
No, this is the little guy that John McCain wants to help.
These little guys got loans for houses they should never have been in. Let's face it.
I agree.
People, when you and I grew up, it was 3 times mortgages. That's what you could, whatever your income was, times 3, that's the price of the value of the house you could get.
You know what? When I did it the first time, it was 2.5 time mortgage. That shows you how much, just in a couple of years older than you I am, that you know.
They say 40%. But the people, the realtors who were showing, you know, you come into a realtor, they say, what do you make? What can you afford? That's, you know, the loan officers, the banks who it. Everyone down the line made money. And at the end of the day, you have a poor little guy who you ask him why he was in this, how he could afford this house. He says, I don't know, but they found me a loan to do it.
Right, and it's disgusting. I mean, it really is what we did with the subprime mortgage industry over the last 5 years, well, not in the last 2 since it collapsed, but in the 3 years leading up to that, the 4 years leading up to that, it was really obscene. It should not have taken place. But now that we find ourselves in this mess, Jeff, how do we get out of it? And do you save the market? Do you save the economy? Do you save individual people? You know, it's a very amorphous situation.
They got in trouble, and it's not. And is it for you and me to bail out people and the bankers who did it?
It's not our fault.
Unfortunately, 571-749-1166. Please call in and join the conversation. We'll be right back after these messages.
This is firstgov.gov, where we're obsessed with getting you government information.
Brand new student loan applications on the site, baby. This calls for a celebration. Where's your uncle?
So in the end, it was either take the astronaut gig or come work here. What can I say? Duty called.
Dude, that's my cop.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. No, I'm pretty sure that's Sam's cop.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. No. Sam's? No.
Just log on or email us and get what you need.
C, change of address form. That's how it's done.
D, driver's license renewal.
E, emailing Social Security information.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Nice, we'll allow it. All right,
What are those? Government surplus cars for auction.
You posted those online last time.
No, you did.
I'm posting them online this time!
For all your government information, firstgov.gov.
Oh, what have we got here? Sometimes you feel tired. You can't seem to lose those extra pounds off your midsection. And your joints hurt when you take the stairs? Well, you're getting older. But I'm happy to say that there's some simple things we can do to keep you happy and healthy for years to come. We can also lower your risk for some serious diseases the older population is often subject to. Proper nutrition is more important than ever. Your body has changed, you know. Not as many treats. A basic exercise plan, lots of walks and fresh air, and most importantly, come and see me for twice-yearly checkups to help ensure the best possible quality of life. Now, how does that sound? Good boy.
Improve the quality of life for your elderly pet. Schedule twice-yearly checkups that include preventive care and regular lab work. A message from the veterinary members of the American Animal Hospital Association.
Why don't you welcome us back since you're on the mic?
I think they.
Welcome back to Inside Scoop. Mark Levine is on vacation. I'm Jeffrey Sachs with Mike Lane. Please join us in the conversations. 571-749-1166. during the break, Mike, you wanted to take us down capital gains. You've been itching to do it. Why don't you start, and then I will reply.
Capital gains way. I think always it's a good idea to have a low capital gains tax rate because, excuse me, it does encourage investment in the economy, and that's what you want to do. You know, money is like water. It will seek the easiest way to get to its own level. And if you're taxing one activity higher than you're taxing a second activity, and you can get an equal return on investment, then the capital is going to go in a direction where it can keep more of its money and pay less taxes. And so if you have a higher capital gains rate, you're going to have that investment capital going someplace else where it can find either a lower tax rate or a higher rate of return or something that will keep it out of the American economy. And if you have a lower capital gains tax rate, then you'll have all kinds of foreign income, foreign investment, American investment, everything coming into the American economy, which is exactly what we want at this point. John McCain wants to keep capital gains taxes low. In fact, he wants to lower them in the long term, and Barack Obama says he wants to raise them. I think this is the strongest argument John McCain has.
I disagree with you, and I disagree with the general gist that you're going. In general, whenever you create a metric, you're saying, this is the metric I want to follow. Capital gains, we want to maximize capital gains and minimize taxes on it. When you set up a system, someone's going to find a way to minimize their taxes, however you do it, whether they call it ordinary income or capital gains. We value work in this country. We value the meritocracy. We don't want the Paris Hiltons living scot-free because they can continue to sell their shares of Hilton hotels without a capital gains. That's why we have a capital gains, so that the rich pay taxes and they benefit because they have a stable government that allows them to have those capital gains, and the poor benefit because they have the jobs that those capital gains go to. At the end of the day, you also have the estate tax. This is we didn't want aristocracy. Why should Bill Gates' great-grandson never have to work a day? We have the Mellon family up in Pittsburgh, PA. Why should these guys never have to work because their great-grandfather did something great? And they built companies. But the capital gains and the estate tax help balance it is balancing between labor and capital. Everyone's supposed to pay. Management gets a third, capital gets a third, labor gets a third. Labor pay taxes, we were just talking about that. Why shouldn't capital gains pay taxes, and what is an appropriate rate? Whatever we do, when I set my investment policy, whether I am Citibank, whether I'm GM, I have certain economic assumptions that I am going to follow that factor in. And when John McCain comes in and says, we're going to cut it for 2 years, that's all he's talking about. 2010 and 2011, we're going to cut capital gains because he doesn't want to have to pay for the impact of cutting it long term. He just wants to say 2000. The business people don't want to see that because they've done their capital gain and capital planning and investment policy 5, 6, 7 years out. Unlike the 3-month term, we've set it at a reasonable rate. You know, it was 15%. They cut it to 10% under Bush. Let it go back to 15% and just go with it. When you change stuff, business people dislike uncertainty. That's what you're doing. And at the end of the day, from a fiscal policy standpoint, you're giving out money to corporations like oil companies, $12 billion this past quarter. ExxonMobil, Chevron, $12 billion, and you're going to give them more money.
Well, Jeff, you're about half right here, and I'm thrilled that you got most of it. You know, there,
I am an economist by training.
Here's and I'm not, but I'm going to tell you where you're wrong anyway, and then we'll rap about it a little bit. Here's where I disagree with you, and that is that you know, you can bring up an individual example like Paris Hilton, who, to my estimation, she meets the Supreme Court definition of pornography in that she has no particular socially redeeming value, and so I know
we're not talking about her as an individual. We're talking about her as a taxpayer.
And you know, I don't care whether Paris Hilton works or whatever it is. She's still going to pay taxes because she still has income, whether it's earned income or investment income. She still has taxes to pay, and just because Paris Hilton passes on or Paris Hilton's parents pass on, doesn't give you and me the right to confiscate that property that they have built into their estate that they were leaving to their heirs and say, no, that's our policy because we want to spread the wealth around the way Barack Obama wants to spread the wealth around. You know, it's up to people to find a way to create and generate their own wealth. And I certainly believe that, you know, everyone has that capability and everyone has that potential, and we all aspire to creating our own wealth. We don't want to steal somebody else's wealth.
You know, John McCain voted to eliminate the estate tax.
Istate tax.
He voted to eliminate it entirely.
Thank God. Because
this isn't her having to go work because we're taking all her stuff. We're going to take some of her parents' wealth that her parents got because this is people before her laid the economic foundation with a stable government, with low debt, which Bush doesn't like anyway. This advantaged her parents. Now, at the end of the person's life, we can't say you've benefited from the government largesse in many ways, both police protection and social policies and legal policies. You know, you don't have any obligation to society for that.
Let's give an example of how this works in the real world in the upper income levels, okay? We had a very rich guy.
Which is how many people in society?
Well, I'm going to tell you the unintended consequences of what you and Obama want to do. You take a guy that was very, very successful, built a huge estate, probably close to $1 billion. His name was Jack Kent Cooke. He owned the Washington Redskins, okay?
And he got bad legal advice. There's no getting around that.
And then he dies.
Right.
And he leaves his estate to his son, John Kent Cooke. And John Kent Cooke can't even keep the team in the family because he can't afford to pay the taxes on the estate and have enough money left over to buy the team. It just couldn't help. So what happened? We wind up with Danny Snyder, who, according to all reports, is somebody that nobody would want to have a beer with. Nobody wants to own the team. Hasn't put a winning team out there since Jack Kent Cooke owned the team.
They did win yesterday.
I mean, it was all right. So, but I mean, this is the law of unintended consequences. You're trying to steal the money from this family, and you wind up, you know, ruining the team.
At the end of the day, the people who are in that financial establishment, established trusts, established foundations, and for the most part, they do pass on their inheritance virtually tax-free. They buy farms. Farms are tax-free. They, you know, I can set up living trusts or trusts so that maybe you don't get, you know, all the money, but you get the interest on that money. And that's forever. And you pay taxes on that interest as ordinary income, but you can't touch the principal. There are tax dodges. The fact is, Jack Kent Cooke was so tied up in his divorces, plural, that he screwed up. Sorry, I can't say that word on TV. He messed up passing it on to his son.
We're on cable. I think you can say what you want.
I still don't want to say that. Jack Kent Cooke is a bad example because they did not do proper tax planning. You know, you plan for a funeral, you plan for your funeral estates. That's why we buy life insurance. You know, should life insurance policies be taxable? Barack Obama has said no. John McCain has put it in there.
All right, so Jeff, I think what you just argued for is let's have a huge estate tax. Let's capture this money back out of the family because they don't deserve it, because you shouldn't live off what your parents' success was. But then let's create enough loopholes that you can leave it to them anyway that only the really rich can afford. I don't want loopholes for the rich like that. I want something standard for everybody.
I didn't create those loopholes. The special interests created those loopholes.
Right.
And that's why
we shouldn't have them.
Yes. At the end of the day, you know, Barack Obama's capital gains tax is $3.5 million per person. So my parents could leave me $7 million tax-free. Your parents could leave you $7 million. McCain says you could leave. Someone could leave you. May you be so blessed. $100 billion, if your name's Gates, tax-free. Is that fair?
But yes, it is. It's entirely fair. Why is it not fair that if Bill Gates built a better mousetrap, which he did?
And why does Bill Gates argue against the capital gains?
In fact, Bill Gates didn't build a better mousetrap. He stole the mousetrap from Apple, and then he got rich marketing it. But
you're partially right there. He did steal DOS, but it wasn't from Apple.
A different debate, a different night. Anyway, so if he was successeful, I see no reason. You know, Bill Gates is a good philanthropist. He gives, you know, a couple $1 billion a year to charity. You know, he's good. You know, and you want to take this money from him so he can't give this money to charity?
He has set up the trust so it won't be taxed. He didn't sell the stock and give the money.
No, he set up the trust.
He set up a trust, gave the stock to the trust can sell it and pay for their health programs, their educational programs, and all the good work that they do.
And that's an example of the way it should be done, but I don't want the government telling Bill Gates he has to do that. Why can't Bill Gates just be a good philanthropist, a good American, and a good person, a good human being, and do that on his own without the government telling him?
Okay. At the end of the day, we still need a capital gains tax. Whether you work,
I'll give you a minor capital gains tax. I'll give you 5,
how much
10%.
is minor? 15%?
10%.
That's what McCain wants. It was 15%.
I'll give you 10.
What is the difference between a 5% difference? For most of the people, most of our viewers, they're not making millions of dollars capital gains.
But everyone, not everyone. Most people, above 50% people, are now part of the investor class. If you look at the statistics for all things, more than 50% of Americans are involved in the stock market. They've invested, they own stocks.
Through their 401k and retirement plans.
Through their 401ks, and right, exactly. And this is going to help their retirement. And when you have a higher capital gains on this, you're decreasing their retirement comfort and their retirement planning. And I think most Americans, when they realize that, people dream about their retirement, they plan for it, they invest for it, they work at it, and they don't want Barack Obama making it less of a retirement because he wants to increase capital gains.
When you invest in your retirement plans through the 401ks, the IRAs, the Roth IRAs, and your pension plan, when you get with your matching contributions, you don't pay capital gains on those.
No,
you don't.
You pay capital gains on transactions when you sell it. That's when you do it.
If you're 70 and a half, when you go to sell it, you pay it as ordinary income. But you didn't pay it back here.
Right.
That's the majority. Over half the people that you said, half of the Americans own stock. You're right. Of those, less than 25% own stock directly and will pay capital gains. The vast majority of people who are in the stock market or in your investing class do it through their 401ks, their IRAs, their mutual funds, and the like.
And that's good for America.
But they don't pay capital gains when they're in those vehicles already.
Well, they do if they transact within those vehicles.
If I call up my IRA and say, sell, it's in the IRA, self-directed IRA, sell my GE, buy more Microsoft, I don't pay capital gains unless I take it out.
Right. If you reinvest it. If you take it out, though, then you're not only, then you're paying the capital gains, you're paying the penalty, you're paying...
I don't think you pay capital gains on money you pull out from your IRA. You do pay the 10% early withdrawal penalties, which is a different issue entirely. At the end of the day, capital gains taxes, the vast majority of people are not going to be adversely impacted or adversely favored. You're not investing, and our viewers aren't investing because of what the capital gains tax is.
Higher taxes discourage a certain type of activity. Lower taxes encourage a certain type of activity. If investment is good for America, then a lower capital gains tax will encourage more investment and accomplish the economic growth that we want to accomplish.
If Americans were not spending 103% of their economic GDP, their earning power every year, that would make sense. At this point, we're not even we're spending more than we're saving, whether it's home equity lines, whether it's credit cards. We have to change that philosophy that you can live beyond your means. That is a fundamental problem that we have to address in this country. You need to start saving. I would also encourage you to call 571-749-1166. We're going to be right back after this commercial. Please give us a call and join in the conversations. Let your voices be heard about where you stand on our tax policies for the election this November. We'll be right back.
This year, 28,000 Americans will be diagnosed with oral cancer. Every year.
Some dreams are universal. Dreams that inspire us. Multiple sclerosis is a devastating disease that changes lives forever. The National MS Society does more for people with MS than any organization in the world. But we can't do it alone. To get involved, visit us online at nationalmssociety.org. or call 1-800-FIGHT-MS. This is why we're here. because nobody dreams of having multiple sclerosis.
What's wrong with this picture? Half of young Americans can't locate economic powers like Japan and India. 20% can't even find the Pacific Ocean. Without geography, our children aren't ready for the world. Geography is everywhere. It's incredible creatures, rhythm, fashion, flavor. It's economics and politics. It's change. Understanding connections between people and places is critical in the 21st century. That's why we created mywonderfulworld.org. Go there now for your free parent and teacher action kits and give our kids the power of global knowledge. Because kids who understand our world today can succeed in it tomorrow.
And welcome back to Inside Scoop. I'm your acting host, Jeff Sachs. Mark Levine will be back next week. With me today is Mike Lane from Intelephant Strategies. We're taking your calls, 571-749-1166. As we come back, let's talk energy policies, and
particularly as they impact the economy.
Everything deals with the economy today.
Right.
You know, at the Republican National Convention, they said, "Drill, baby, drill." It was the song of the night. It was the no car tax of Gilmore, who's screwed up Virginia 10 years ago with his no car tax. Drill, baby, drill. At the end of the day, they're not. Even if they drilled tomorrow, and it takes years to bring these assets online for the oil to start flowing, because capital gains. They don't want to invest money that they don't get an economic return. And I recognize that. But at the end of the day, Barack Obama has come out and said, if you invest in alternative energy, you put solar panels on your house. Right now, if I went and put solar panels on my house, I can't because I'm in a townhome community, I can take off 10 cents on the dollar. He thinks that should be 100 cents. If I put in $100 into a solar panel on my roof, it's a capital investment. Why can't I take off alternative energy $100. If I buy a fuel-efficient water heater, I can only take out 10 cents on the dollar. You know, we're saving money in the long run, because we're doing these environmentally friendly things. I think you have a small little Honda or motorcycle you drive for fuel efficiency purposes also.
I do. Jeff, you're right. I am and have been a supporter of incentives, tax incentives for alternative energy since the 1970s, when we had the first energy crisis. And I happened to have the luxury of working for an energy-related trade group at the time, and I saw what could be done in terms of solar and wind. I worked for an air conditioning association, and solar-powered heating and air conditioning was certainly one of the things that had the potential for relieving. Here's the deal. And I could even support higher tax credits than we have now. I don't know what the magic number is. Maybe it's 100, maybe it's 50. It's probably not 10. It should be higher. But we're not going to have in 10 years, or even 20 years, or even 30 years, wholesale conversion of our economy to alternative energy. This is going to be a long march that gets us there, because the technology and the efficiency of these things is just not there. You can't, if you were allowed to put solar panels on your roof in your townhome community, it wouldn't be a reliable source of 100% energy for the rest of your time there. It just doesn't work.
The only reliable way you're talking about is putting more carbons in the atmosphere.
No, there are other ways than putting carbons. What we need is a bridge, okay? And this is where John McCain and the Republicans, with our drill here, drill now, save money, pay less strategy works. It's a bridge that gets us to the point where wind and solar and geothermal and clean coal and nuclear can do all these things. Now, the only reason it takes 10 years to get new oil wells or new oil online is because of the threat of lawsuits. Back in the 70s, when we built Prudhoe Bay and built the pipeline, from the time we said go till the time we loaded up the first tanker in Prudhoe Bay was 3 years. We can do it that quick. What we can't do is we can't get past the environmental lawsuits, the environmental impact statements,
well,
the studies, and things
George
like that.
Bush doesn't like the environmental EPA either.
That's why
George Bush has the EPA fast track a fence along the Mexican border to stop the illegal immigrants who are coming for jobs. He can do it. We can do this if we have the political will to do it. But when you have two oil men and George Bush and Dick Cheney in the White House, they don't have a personal economic interest to find the alternative energies.
I'm not going to defend.
Palin's husband is an oil executive. We're trading one set of oil executives for another oil executive.
Well, I don't think Todd Palin is, going to be making the decisions at the top level. Look, I'm not going to defend.
He is in Alaska, according to the jury.
I'm not going to defend the Bush-Cheney energy policies. I think they made a mistake back early in the administration when they did not give additional weight to some of the alternative energy policies that might be. Right. But the Congress wouldn't go along with even the little incentives that they wanted them to go along with.
The Republican-controlled Congress at that time.
Here's what we need. We need everything. Everything should be on the table. John McCain puts everything on the table. Barack Obama takes nuclear and drilling off the table. He says, well, we need to look at drilling.
I don't think he took nuclear off the table. I'll have to check on that.
Well, what he says was that we need nuclear consistent with, coming about with safe disposal methods of the spent fuel rods and stuff like that. Well, the fact is we don't have safe disposal methods of the spent fuel rods right now, so therefore he's taken nuclear off the table.
And we have put $2 billion, I mean, it dwarfs the $700 billion we sent up to Wall Street, into Yucca Mountain in Las Vegas.
And we ought to use it. And we ought to use it. And both sides won't use it because Nevada is a swing state, and both sides are going after the votes in Nevada. And we just ought to put the stuff in Yucca and be done with it.
France recycles their nuclear rods. France recycles. You can take everything out of a nuclear power plant. You turn it up to a temperature where you basically melt it. Again, all the steel, remelt it. You take out the nuclear. It becomes out as standard steel that you can then use for cars, home appliances, everything. There are ways to reprocess it. This government has said, no, we're not going to give you tax advantages to do it. And everything in this country, from wind, there are tax advantages for it. Clinton put them in, the Republicans let them expired, the new Congress, the Democrats are trying to put them back in. We go through these cycles, and at the end of the day, corporations like consistency. They like to be able to say, if I put money into this wind farm and I have this tax,
they want to be able to continue the incentives.
And every time we change administrations, they sweep it all away and take out everything. That's what Bush did, and now we're trying to put it back in because oil prices are, $70 or $140 a barrel, depending on the week.
Depending on whether it's yesterday or tomorrow, right?
Yes.
All right. Well, I think actually the good news is that I only paid $2.59 for gas over the weekend.
At BJ's, I hope.
Actually, it was at an Exxon, if you can believe that. It was not in the meters in Front Royal.
All right, well, I'll drive out to Front Royal so we can get cheap gas.
I happened to be there looking at the foliage. It was a good weekend to do that, Jeff.
It was a beautiful weekend.
Here's the deal on the energy thing. You have to have everything on the table. You can't take fossil fuels off the table the way Barack Obama has in the short run. We can over 30 to 50 years, we can totally get rid of our fossil fuel dependency. We can over 10 years get rid of our foreign oil dependence, but we can't convert to a renewable energy in 10 years or even 20 years. It's just not going to happen. We need the bridge. We need the bridge, and that's drill here.
But the Republicans have not been willing to build that bridge. They have not been willing to invest the money in power lines. Look who is trying to stop the power line coming in from West Virginia. What was that power line going to do? Bring us cheaper electricity from the coal mines and power plants in West Virginia into our market. And who was trying to stop it?
Jeff,
the Republican Attorney General.
You know that every
side has two sides of the story.
But every public office holder works to protect his constituents, and if the constituents
not in my backyard people.
Yeah, I mean the power grid was a NIMBY thing. Obviously, it was a NIMBY thing. It was going to be a problem for the people that were going to be located relatively close to it.
And I contend Barack Obama will rise above it.
Oh, I doubt that. He responds to every special interest group in the Democratic Party, particularly the enviro wackos, which are the ones that oppose the power grid.
I don't think the enviro wackos who are trying to encourage people to get energy efficient light bulbs and energy efficient appliances and are trying to bring down our demand for power. That's what they're trying to do.
And isn't it wonderful? I was out shopping 2 weeks ago and I bought my first energy efficient bulb, and you know why I did it?
God, only 2 weeks ago?
I bought my first energy efficient bulb because the marketplace allowed me to do it. They've come down in price. They're a little bit less expensive now. Over the course of the thing, I can save money. It's really, really good. I didn't need the government to tell me that I had to buy it. I did it on my own. Isn't the American market a wonderful thing?
I'm just stunned that it was only 2 weeks ago you bought your first bulb.
Well, actually, I think it was 9 days ago, but let's not quibble over time.
The point is, these bulbs have been around for years.
And they were way too expensive up until...
The incandescent light bulb was 25 cents a piece at the dollar store. The microfluorescents are $1 a piece at the dollar store. Okay, yes, 4 for 1 versus 1 for 1, but that one microfluorescent uses, 38 watts for 100 watts the regular bulb used. You do the math. You tell me in a year and a half you'll have a simple payback. These bulbs will last you 4 to 5 years. Your incandescent bulbs last you a year. They pay for themselves.
I've done the math, and that's why I bought it, because they will pay for themselves, and I didn't need my government to tell me I had to do it. I did it all by myself. I'm an average American who ran the math and decided it was a good purchase.
At the end of the day, government, your tax policy drives individual decisions. What decisions do we want those to be? Do we want our government to encourage us to save for retirement? That's why we have 401ks. Do we want our government to encourage us to be environmentally friendly, buy the fuel-efficient cars instead of getting tax rebates to those driving the big SUVs because they call them work vehicles? That's the issues that we want on our next president, and that's why Barack Obama is looking for the future. You have 30 seconds.
All right. Well, I certainly look forward to the election. I think that John McCain is a balanced, experienced, not only in domestic policy but certainly in foreign policy. We still live in a very, very dangerous world. John McCain knows the energy markets. He knows the economic markets. It's going to be a very interesting election, Jeff. I've appreciated the opportunity to be with you tonight, and we'll see in, 15 days how it all comes out?
Yeah. In the last 30 seconds, when you look at the Democratic policies and you look at the Republican policies, the Democrats are out for the individuals. The Republicans are doing this trickle-down economics that we've tried for the past 8 years. You've seen the results. When you look at the individual tax policies, you go to the Tax Policy Center, you go to the WashingtonPost.com, you look at their individual websites. You will see individuals, empowering individuals and helping people make good decisions, or give money to the corporate interest and let it trickle down. That is the issues that you face come November 4th. We encourage you to vote. Thank you for tuning in. We'll see you next week. Mark Levine will be back, and see you next week. Thank you for joining us.